And I started to panic because I could feel that, and I just couldn't stop it. I started to lose my hearing. I gasped for breath, couldn't feel my body. He's like, that was just so scary. Hello there, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi and welcome to Mad Creative Life. Here on my channel, I mainly do yoga and art videos, but I also do some vlogging videos, food videos, and sometimes I do occasional stories about things that happen in my life. So if you're into that kind of thing, definitely feel free to subscribe and stay up to date with all of my new content. Anyway, this story is one I've been putting off for a while, to be honest. There are a lot of conflicting ideas and viewpoints and beliefs out there about the COVID-19 vaccine and whether you should get it or not, whether it is safe for you biologically, whether it is ethically okay to encourage or force people to get the vaccine or incentivize people to get the vaccine. And I just want to say, number one, right off the bat, I am not in any way making this video to encourage people to get the vaccine or to not get the vaccine. That is completely your choice. I think that bottom line is everybody should just do their best to stay educated and informed and make the best decision you can for the health of yourself and for your family and for other people that you're going to come in contact with in your life, out in public or at your job. So that's my little 2 cents on that. That's my little disclaimer. I'm not trying to tell people that it's unsafe or not to get it or anything like that. Clearly, I did choose to get the vaccine for several reasons, which I'll mention later in this video. But yeah, let me just jump into the story and tell you guys what happened, because my experience is very different than other people's experiences, and I think that it's also a pretty crazy story about what happened. So yeah. Okay, so I have my vaccine card. Yeah, that's my vaccine card. I just had to pull this out, just one, for proof that I actually did get my vaccine, and for two, it has the date that this happened because it is now September 14th, and this happened back in July 25th. And I've been holding off on this story because I've been trying to collect my thoughts and think about how I want to present this story, but also because I wanted to wait and see if any side effects came up, or just to see how the progress of everything was going as more and more people got vaccinated and as this new Delta variant came out. To be honest, I really hate talking about the virus. I really do, because so many people are talking about it. It's just like a normal small talk conversation thing, because it's I don't know, I feel like it's kind of being force-fed to all of us, in the news and the media, that's all people are talking about, and I'm kind of annoyed because I just, I think that bottom line is just try to be healthy and safe, take precaution for yourself and others, and just keep it simple, just keep moving, you know what I mean? That's my personal belief on that. But anyway, so this happened back in July 25th, and my brother and I were the last people in our immediate family to get the vaccine, and we put it off for several reasons. One, we were not trying to be resistant in any way to health and safety of the public, but we wanted to wait as long as possible for the vaccine to be totally safe and to be tested, and to have as much time for the data for any side effects that could potentially happen with the vaccine. So that's why my brother and I decided to wait. I do have two brothers. One of them did get the vaccine and the other one did not. Anyway, so I had gotten hired at my job about a month or two previous. I think it was actually a month and a half before I got this vaccine. And this was right about the time that masks were first starting to come on for the first time. And if you were fully vaccinated, you didn't have to wear a mask in public. And so that was starting to happen. And I was really, really sick of wearing a mask for 8 hours a day, not being able to breathe very well. It was actually messing with my brain, to be honest. I wasn't getting enough oxygen flow to my brain, and it was starting to make me fatigued. It was even starting to make me kind of frustrated and angry. And I decided that I was going to make the choice to get vaccinated fully so I could have the option, in case I really just could not take wearing my mask inside anymore, that I could have the option to safely wear no mask indoors. So that was my driving, motivating reason, was for my job, and also because my family was heavily encouraging my brother and I to get vaccinated, since everyone else in the family was, and I was still very on the fence about it. I'm not gonna lie, I personally had equally conflicting beliefs about it. There was part of me that believed it was unsafe, that we didn't know what they were putting in it, that there were going to be harmful side effects that weren't going to show up until years later, that we weren't going to know about, obviously, because the vaccine hadn't been around for that long, that it was potentially an infringement on people's freedoms, everything like that. Everything you've probably heard on the internet, I had taken into consideration. And then I also was, well, you know, we've had to take vaccines since we were children for many different illnesses and ailments, and that's actually been something positive that has helped people get less sick in their lives. It's helped for public safety. Millions of people have already taken the vaccine and have been totally fine. There's like no death rate. There's very minimal effects, if any. And so I was weighing these pros and cons here, and I finally just broke down and said, you know what, I'm just gonna get it over with. I'm gonna get the vaccine. And I told my brother, I said, hey, I found a place online, which happened to be a Walmart actually, where they were offering the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which, as you guys probably know, that is the 1-dose vaccine. So you don't have to get it twice, you just get it once and you're fully covered. And so I told my brother, I said, if you'd like to, you can come with me and we can get the vaccine together, and we would just get one shot and then we're done and nobody can bother us anymore. So he agreed. So the next day at around 11 a.m., my brother and I went into the Walmart. We did everything. We just waited in line. We signed the paper. We gave them our information. They did a good job walking us through the process. They said, okay, we're gonna sanitize the area. We're gonna give you an injection here, and you're gonna sit down for a while. You may feel a little bit dizzy, but it's gonna be fine. And then you'll be free to go in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes or so. So that was all well and good. Not gonna lie, I was a bit nervous. I felt pretty secure in this until right before I got my injection. Then I started to get very panicky all of a sudden. And I also want to preface this by saying I was in a rush that morning and I did not eat a breakfast, which is a no-no. If you're gonna get any sort of shot or vaccine, you definitely want to make sure you have eaten something at least an hour before. I didn't do that, so I quickly ran to the cereal aisle in the Walmart and I just grabbed some granola bars and I quickly paid for them, and I just ate one as fast as I could, literally right before the shot. And as you can imagine, that was not enough to really satisfy me or get my digestive system going or even get enough sugar in my blood. So I sat there, I started to feel very nervous, and I started to second guess my decision on getting this vaccine. And the lady was very calm. She walked me through it and explained, and I sat there and I was cooperative, and she gave me the shot, and immediately now, really quick, I just want to say my brother did go ahead of me. So he got the vaccine first, and then he went out and sat down in the chair, and then I was brought in to like the little curtain area and they gave me my shot. So while my brother was sitting in the chair and I couldn't see him, I couldn't see anyone, I received the shot and I immediately felt the surge of fluids filling my arm and getting in my body, in my system. And I started to panic because I could feel that. And I think my immune system immediately started to respond to it because I started feeling quite dizzy and nauseous. Another thing that I experienced was my thoughts. My thoughts started to get very frantic and nervous. I started to think that I'd made the wrong choice, that this shot was gonna make me sick, that I was in fear for what effects were gonna take place after this vaccine was in my system, if I was ever gonna return to normal. I just had like every worst case scenario thought flooding to my brain at this one moment. And I just couldn't stop it. I just tried to breathe. I just tried to smile and breathe slowly and evenly as best I could. But even that was really not enough to take my mind away from the effects I was already starting to feel. So I stood up. I was feeling a little bit dizzy. She walked me over and there was no more chairs to sit. So I stood by my brother for a moment, and then I realized very quickly that I should not be standing. So I kneeled down by my brother. He was starting to feel very woozy. I could see the color leaving his face, and he did have to hunch forward slightly and place his head sort of overlooking his knees. You know, when you sit in that position when you're about to faint or pass out and you kind of have to put your head between your knees. So he was already starting to get into that state, and one of the nurses quickly brought a chair over for me, thank goodness. So I sat in a chair right behind my brother. And again, this was in the middle of a Walmart right in front of the pharmacy stand. I sat there and I started feeling extremely dizzy. I started to lose my hearing and I heard this ringing sound through my brain and my ears. And then I started to see like little sparkles in my vision. And so I breathed very deeply and slowly. And I even made like a humming sound, like a to try to calm me. And then all of a sudden, everything was black, but just for a moment. And I was experiencing something completely different. And this might be kind of hard to explain and kind of strange, but I was in Hawaii in a grocery store with my friends, and we were like talking with each other and just like having a normal day, and it was warm and colorful and everything was like great. And then all of a sudden my head started to hurt and I stopped and I was like, ooh, I'm feeling really dizzy, what's going on? And I started to see this white light in front of me, like it was like this blinding light. And I looked into this light and I saw like a blurred vision of what looked like a bad dream. That's the best way I can describe it. It looked and felt like a bad dream was happening, and I was like, oh no, I think I'm having a nightmare. I'm like, I don't want to feel this. I want to go back to feeling good like I was just before with my friends who are around me. And I started feeling this pulling into this dream that I was having, and I was like, no, this feels terrible. I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to see this. I don't want to be part of this. As I was like experiencing and witnessing like this dream unfolding in front of me, I realized I was like coming out of like this blurriness and this light, and I was laying on the ground, opening my eyes, looking up, and there were people standing above me, and they were talking to me, but I could still barely hear them. Like my hearing wasn't fully back yet, and they were over me, and one of them was like, she was kind of yelling at me and like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was just laying there. And then I had realized instantly, oh no, that wasn't a dream. This is really happening. And so once I realized that, in a second, I like gasped for breath and I like tensed my whole body, and I tried to get up and they told me just lay down. And I was laying there and I like couldn't feel my body. Like I still felt pretty numb and tingly. My hands were clammy and cold. It was just this surge of adrenaline running through me because there were people that were clearly freaked out and frightened. I was laying on the ground in a place it took me a minute to remember where I was, and I was like, oh my god, I'm in a grocery store, I'm in Walmart, like on the ground. I'm like, how did I get on the ground? I was still trying to come back to all this, and then once I started breathing a little bit, I like sat up and realized I don't even want to share this on camera because it's kind of embarrassing, but this is just a natural thing that happens. I realized as I was waking up and starting to sit up that I was peeing. Yes, I realized I was peeing myself on the floor of a Walmart. This is so embarrassing. I can't even believe I'm sharing this on the internet. This is like, it was so disgusting. I was wearing jeans and everything, and I just laid there, and this was all happening simultaneously. I think I was peeing as I was awakening, and then as I was sitting up, I realized what was happening, and I was like, oh no, oh my god. And so nobody noticed, thank God. It wasn't that much, but I was peeing, and I sat up enough, and the nurse was still yelling at me. This poor woman was just terrified at what happened, and she's like, are you okay? Are you all right? And I said, yes, I'm fine. I just passed out, I'm fine. And another one of the pharmacy workers, he kept running in and out of the back room of the pharmacy, and he kept asking me questions. He's like, do you have any history of heart problems? Do you have any history of kidney problems? And I said, no, none of that. No, I just get woozy. And I think what happened was a combination of not only my own psychological fear about getting this vaccine, but also a mixture of having an empty stomach. And several members of my family, including myself, do have a history of getting lightheaded and nauseous when we do get injections, shots, things like that. And I'm not exactly sure if it's biological or psychological or a mixture of that. My brother was there. He was standing looking over me, but he was still very woozy and nauseous. He told me later that he was experiencing a similar thing where he said he lost his hearing the same way I did, and he said he lost his vision as well. It started to sparkle and then he couldn't see anything, and he got very kind of sweaty and clammy, just very nauseous feeling. And he said he probably would have passed out if I hadn't passed out behind him. He said he heard the sound of me falling on the ground, and he thought that the shelf of candy had fallen over. The shelf of candy that was right next to us had fallen over, and he thought that's what that was, and then he heard the commotion of other people, and so he snapped into it and was starting to look around and realized that I had fallen to the ground, hit my head on the ground. So they were asking me questions, and they told me we're going to call the paramedics, and I said, oh no, don't call them, I'm fine, I'm awake, I'm totally fine. And they said, well, we called them. And I said, okay. And I definitely didn't feel well enough to even stand yet, so I sat on the ground, and then I realized I had to lay down some more. So I told one of the pharmacy women, I said, I'm sorry if this is weird, but I have to lay down for a few minutes longer. I just can't. So I laid down. They brought me some water, which is really great. One of the man at the pharmacy said, you're not allowed to eat or drink anything right now. And I said, well, what about this water? And he said, no. I thought that was kind of funny, and I was like, water's fine, like what the heck. Anyway, so I waited, I was calming. I told my brother that I peed myself. I told one of the pharmacy leads, I said, this is so embarrassing, but I peed myself and I really just like need something to like clean up with. So she went and got me some paper towels, which I was like wiping the ground, and I sat on some paper towels, and I just would not get up because I was afraid that there'd be a wet spot on my jeans. In just a couple minutes, the paramedics showed up, and I'm so glad my brother thought to take some photos, because after this whole event happened, I told him, I said, I wish that we got video footage of this. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but I'm like, this would be such a great story time video, you know, this is because it was just so chaotic when this happened. And he said, well, I got a couple photos. Yes, you're the best. So here's some photos of when the paramedics showed up. There was about 5 of them, I think, if I remember. They kneeled down on the ground next to me. I have souvenirs. They quickly started to tape these little things on my arms and my legs and take my vitals. They asked me questions about any medical history, and I said, no, I just didn't eat breakfast today, and I just get really nervous and woozy around shots and vaccines and anything like that. It just makes me very nauseous. And then they told me they needed me to stand up to check something else, and then I kind of fidgeted around for a moment, and then I said, okay guys, I need to level with you. I peed myself when I was unconscious, and I don't want to get up because I'm afraid that people will see my pants. And they said, oh, no worries, we have a blanket. So they brought me a shock blanket. I wrapped it around myself, and I said, oh, thank you guys, like, thank you so much. I was so embarrassed, and they're like, no, that's totally normal, that happens all the time. They checked me, they said, we can take you to the hospital if you like, and I said, no, that's not gonna be necessary, thank you guys so much, I'm sorry if I caused any worry. And they said, not a problem. And so I had to sign a form, and they said, is there anybody here who can drive you? And I said, yeah, I'm here with my brother, and we'll get home safe. So we thanked them, and then they packed up and left. By this point, I was trying to just stay very focused on what was going on immediately, but out of my peripherals, I could see that a lot of people in the store had obviously kind of gathered around in a radius and were staring and watching all of this happen, because obviously it's not normal to have some girl fall out of her chair and pass out and have everybody start freaking out in Walmart. So yeah, I just tried to laugh and smile about everything and look okay. As my brother and I left, we passed the paramedics, so we thanked them again, and we were walking out to the car in the parking lot, and this man in his car said, hey. I looked over, and he said, I was in there, I saw you, are you okay? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And he said, I was in there and I was actually in line to get the vaccine, but after I saw what happened to you, I walked right out and I was not gonna get the vaccine. And I said, oh no, I wasn't trying. I'm like, don't be afraid. This isn't a normal thing. Like, it's just a vaccine. Like, this only happened because I'm extra sensitive and all the reasons I told you before. And he said, no, he's like, after that, I'm not gonna get it. He's like, that was just so scary. And oh my God, I'm sorry. I feel so bad that I influenced somebody unintentionally to just be completely afraid of the vaccine. It was just one of those wrong place, wrong time scenarios for that person where he just saw something that confirmed his worst fear, and I'm sorry that I contributed to that in any way. At least I got these as some souvenirs and also that shock blanket. After I got in the car, my brother and I sat there for a few minutes and we just sort of calmed down and drank some water and had some laughs, and we're playing some music and just sort of trying to get through it. And then when my brother was ready, because he didn't pass out, he felt fine, he's like, okay, I'm ready, are you ready to go? And I said, sure. So he started to drive in the parking lot very slowly, but all of a sudden I started to get kind of nauseous again, and I said, hey, can you please park again? I don't think I'm ready. So he parked, and I tried to lay down in the chair in the car, but I just didn't feel good. And so I said, okay, I know this is gonna be kind of weird, but I'm gonna lay down on the dirt over there. Just let me lay there until I feel better. And he said, okay. So I took the blanket and I put put it down and I laid on the bare dirt next to some hedges that were like on the edge of the parking lot, and I just laid there in the sun and just kept breathing, kind of just trying to ground. And that was like my most immediate way to ground to like the earth, to just kind of calm down and release that trauma that just happened, because that was a trauma, I'm not gonna lie. Not only the shock of smashing my head against like that hard floor, but also waking up to all that panic and surge in the air, and also my body's reaction immediately to that vaccine. My body would have reacted that way to any vaccine, by the way. Like, it was not just because it was the COVID-19 vaccine, it's because it was a shot of a foreign substance coming in my body, and my body immediately wanted to reject it. My brother had this interesting theory, because I told him about the dream that I had when I passed out, and he said that it's possible that I hit my head and my brain had a DMT release. And for anybody that doesn't know, your brain does naturally create DMT. I'll have to double check this, but I think it releases DMT when you're sleeping, and that's part of what creates like your dreams. It's a naturally occurring thing in your brain. It's possible that my brain had a DMT release, and that's why it felt so real, like I was in this space with my friends and I saw everything that it did and I thought it was real. It's because I think my brain just immediately released that chemical, so it would take me to a place, because it's possible that it thought I died on impact, which is kind of incredible, to be honest. That dream was so real, it felt like that was my life and I had been there for who knows how long, and it felt like that was reality, and like there was no sense of time really. It was just I was doing my thing, and then all of a sudden I was being pulled back, and I remember thinking, oh my god, I can't believe I'm living the nightmare. Anyway, gross. I peed myself on the dirty floor of a Walmart. But thank God I only decided to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, because I would not have gone in for a second shot. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I would not have gone in for a second vaccine if that had been my first experience. So I'm really glad I made the choice that I did. I felt fine a little after we got home, and I actually did have work later that day, so I did go into work. And about 7 hours after I got my vaccine shot, it was about halfway into my shift at work, I started to feel muscle aching, chills and soreness. My head started to feel very warm and fatigued, and I was trying to stand there and fold clothes, and I literally couldn't even do that. I was trying and my body was just giving up. It was just so achy. And so I finally went to my supervisor at the time and I said, I'm sorry, I have to go home. Like, I got my shot today and I'm really starting to feel it. And I'm really glad that I called it when I did, because if I had waited half an hour later or more, I don't know if I would have been able to drive myself home safely, because I was able to drive myself home. I was still very fatigued, but I was still alert enough to drive. Once I got home, I got into bed, had a bunch of water, closed my curtains, turned out the lights, and slept for several hours. And I woke up feeling very feverish. I was very warm, very chilled, and my head was throbbing. And I remember my eyes felt like they were burning and bloodshot. Like, my eyes just felt so on fire, and my brain felt on fire. My nose, my sinuses were they felt inflamed, I guess. I didn't have any respiratory issues, thank God. I was sick for about a day and a half. It was not fun. My brother felt very similar experiences with his illness, but he said he experienced lots of respiratory pain. So he was getting lung pain every time he breathed. It felt like it was constricting. It was bad. So I'm really thankful that that didn't happen to me. That wasn't part of my experience. But again, with the burning eyes, the throbbing head, the absolute intensity of the aching and the chills all over my muscles, all over my body was overwhelming. And went back to sleep and just slept and slept as much as I could to sleep most of it out. The next day I was still very kind of weak and fatigued, achy. My fever had gone down. My fever had actually gotten up to 102. So it was definitely hot. The next day my fever had gone down a lot, but I was still, very achy and fatigued. But yeah, after the second day, then I was able to return to work and I was fine. I did notice two interesting things. One, this is not related to the vaccine. This was after I fell and hit my head. My head, oh my God, my head hurt a lot where I hit the ground, obviously. So for several days, it felt kind of like a bruise. So that hurt and that wasn't fun. I also noticed something very strange. So sometimes if I have a lot of caffeine, it feels like an overstimulation or an inflammation right here in my jaw area, but in like the muscles, and then also on this side of my neck. So it's only in this section right here. Do I feel it? I never get that over here on this side. It's only on my right side. Anyway, that area, especially in the jaw, I don't know how else to describe this other than wiry. Instead of feeling inflamed, it just felt like wire. It felt like thin metal wire in my jaw, and so it felt kind of weird to move it sometimes, and I decided to keep an eye on that. And I felt that for a few days, like after I started getting sick from the effects of the vaccine. I felt that for a few days, and then it stopped, and then about a week or two later, after I was completely fine again, I felt it again randomly for a couple days, and then I've never felt it since. So I don't know what that was at all. I've never experienced anything like that feeling before. I just thought that that was something worth mentioning, and that was just kind of unsettling. So anyway, that's the story. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I'm not trying to scare anybody at all by sharing this experience with you guys. I just thought that this is kind of an entertaining story to share. This video is not made to try to sway you to get it or not to get it. This was just me sharing my crazy experience. I got my Howl's Moving Castle mug. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely feel free to subscribe, share, comment, like, all that good stuff. I am continuing to make yoga videos for you guys, so definitely stay tuned for that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste and stay grounded.